Former Foreign Minister Julie Bishop has given her strongest indication yet that she will contest the next federal election. After a bitter and bruising Liberal leadership struggle, the former Foreign Minister said that her electorate has urged her to stay in politics.
But some are wondering if political culture needs to change. For more on this and other stories from the week, from Melbourne, we're talking now with Sally McManus, who's the President of the Australian Council of Trade Unions, and in Sydney, Danita Warren is the CEO of the Master Builders Association. Thanks both of you for coming in.
Pleasure.
Danita, I might start with you. We've had this indication from Julie Bishop that she wants to stay in politics, although that's not confirmed yet. This week we also saw Liberal MP Julia Banks saying that she was going to leave, citing bullying and intimidation from both sides. Is it as simple as politics just being for some and not for others?
There's obviously the intensity of politics makes this robust. I've been in the political environment for 25 years. Do I think it's changed, got better or worse? Not really. I think it's pretty much stayed the same. We do see an intensity and bad behaviour at times. I think it's important, though, that people have called it out over this last week or so, and good on them for doing that. I think bullying at any levels of a workplace, regardless of whether it's Parliament or at a building site, needs to be called out, and we need to ensure that, particularly as leaders, that we're trying to change culture.
Sally McManus, let's go back to when Julia Gillard was Prime Minister and how she was treated and received by the Australian public. Do you feel much has changed since then?
Well, I think there's intensity and there's intensity. I think that a culture of Parliament is dominated still by men, and political parties, some of them are worse than others. And where you've got that culture set by those alpha males who think it's okay to behave in the way that they do, for example, Tony Abbott's a prime example of that with Julia Gillard, and also I think in this circumstance, unfortunately that becomes normal. So you need to have a critical mass of women to change what's normal.
Danita, you said that the culture hasn't changed that much, but is the culture conducive to actually getting things done in politics?
It's not necessarily, but I think Sally's made a point there about more women. I totally agree with her that we need more women, but unfortunately women can bully as much as men. Nevertheless, I think it's important that we have a diverse culture within our political environment, that people don't think they can get away with bullying, and that needs to change. And so certainly we need to look at diversity within our parliamentarians, but obviously, with that in Parliament environment, people need to understand the impact that they are having on individuals and what impact that may have on their mental and physical well-being. And certainly people hopefully are going to reflect on their behaviour in the weeks coming forward.
Why aren't more women in politics?
It is simple, a range of factors, but obviously we need more women. We need more diversity generally, I think, in our parliamentarians.
But how do we get that?
Certainly I think more women need to put their hands up, but it is not that simple. Each party has their different pre-selection processes, but certainly women, I think, need to feel comfortable that they can and thrive in a political environment and be leaders of change in terms of cultural change.
Sally, be it politics, business or the unions, are you seeing young women being encouraged into those sectors? I mean, to take the unions for instance, are you seeing the young women come through?
Oh, yeah, absolutely we are. The average union member these days is a woman and a year or so younger than me. And you can see a layer of leadership coming through that's different, that's more reflective of the workplace. Half the decision-making bodies at the ACTU are made up of women. It's 50-50. We got there by having rules that made sure that happened. And I think that probably if we didn't have those rules, it wouldn't have happened. So in the end, if change isn't happening fast enough because you're relying on it to happen naturally, you're going to have to think of other ways of getting there.
So you're saying quotas are the way to go. That's the only way you're going to change this?
Well, in most circumstances, I think that's right. And I'll tell you why. Sometimes those people who are already in power will look to, okay, who's a good leader? And they look to someone like themselves. Not everyone does that, but too many people do that. So if a leadership is already male-dominated, quite often they'll think, well, the person who's best to be a leader is someone just like me. And so until you change that and you have more women there, you're not going to change who gets promoted up the ranks.
Danita, would you like to see quotas? or something similar?
I'm not necessarily a supporter of quotas, but I think we also need to shift the debate as well. We've had some discussion this week on domestic inequality, and is that actually ensuring that women don't get to leadership roles. I think on a Father's Day we should particularly commend those fathers who really understand the concept of domestic equality, that they do support their partners in pursuing leadership regardless of the family circumstances. So the change that we need to facilitate is not just in workplaces, but it is also in our homes, as well as women ensure that if they're going to pursue leadership opportunities, that they do have those chances because they're in a strong partnership arrangement as well.
Well, that leads us to the point of inequality. And Sally, we've seen a productivity report into inequality. What's the ACTU's response to this?
Well, unfortunately, the Productivity Commission's now showing what plenty of other experts have already said and ordinary people already know, is that both wealth inequality, so that's how much stuff you've got, and income inequality is getting worse. And so, of course, that means our society is changing. It's become more unequal. That means that some people are living in poverty. At the same time, a lot of other people are doing very well. So we're not sharing the wealth that we've got at the moment. It's not been fairly distributed. And that has negative impacts, not just for individuals, but for our whole society.
Sally, the report said that the perception is of the glass half empty, but the most accurate picture that can be drawn suggests each generation is still better than its predecessor. What do you say to that?
Well, that's true, except at the moment we're in a situation where we've got record low wage growth and cost of living's going up higher than wages are. So actually right now we're going backwards in terms of our living standards. But even where you see over a period of time living standards have gone up, it's really not right, is it, that those people at the top are really hoovering up the wealth and those people at the bottom aren't doing as well, whereas as a society we've got more wealth. And so it just comes down to that basic fairness issue.
Tanita, is that the key, wage growth, or the fact that it is stagnant at the moment?
There's obviously some issues at certain points in time, but nevertheless we can't lose sight of the fact that we've had 27 years of economic growth, that we've got very, very good job statistics. So the focus is really where do we need to add value. As overall, in comparison to the rest of the world, we're doing pretty well in terms of our economic well-being. So I think the focus needs to be on where are those pinch points, where are people feeling particularly vulnerable, and I think the focus needs to be on our youth in this country. Those statistics that Sally relied on particularly say they are in a vulnerable position at the time. We know youth unemployment is higher than it should be. So we need to collaboratively work together to focus on key areas of concern and getting more people engaged in the work environment.
One factor here is about population, and we wanted to talk about that as well. Australia's population has hit 25 million. Do you think our communities, our infrastructure is keeping up with that population growth, Tanita?
Well, certainly representing the building industry, we would say more infrastructure is better, obviously, but at the same time we need to balance the fact that we need more population to meet those jobs that we've got and those jobs coming forward and the economic well-being. Have we got the settings right? Probably no, particularly in Sydney and Melbourne, where infrastructure logjams, and it's difficult in terms of ensuring that people are feeling comfortable. Housing affordability also comes into that as well. I think it's good that we're having a population debate. We haven't had it probably for the last 10 years. We really need to look and make sure we have got those settings right for all of the country.
Yeah, and Sally, it's a question of what's an appropriate level of immigration. Certainly that's a debate that the Liberal Party seems to want to have at the moment. We've got the new Minister, Alan Tudge, who is responsible for so-called congestion busting in our cities. And he's actually quoted in today's press saying, look, immigration, that's not responsible for congestion in our cities, but he does want to see a better distribution of migrants.
Yeah, I'd say two things about that. First of all, I agree with what's been said about infrastructure. You think of a lot of cities in the world, huge cities, much, much bigger than Sydney or Melbourne, and they cope so much better. And why is that? Because the government's planned. They plan to have proper public transport so that our roads aren't so congested. They plan for schools and hospitals knowing they'd have a certain population. So just having a bigger population isn't the problem. It's making sure that you've got the city that can cope with it. The second thing I'd say is that this government's overseen a temporary visa system, work visa system, that's really out of control. We've now got over 1 million people on temporary work visas, and those people are pretty vulnerable. They're the ones that are most likely to be exploited, and that's something that really is been driven by employers. So no one's controlling how many people we have. If an employer wants someone on a temporary work visa, it's too easy for them to get them rather than offering those jobs to locals.
I disagree with that. The temporary visa system for employer nominated is very, very strict. But as employer, certainly representing employers in the building industry, we want to employ more Australians, as simple as that. But obviously there are times when employers in certain parts of Australia are struggling to find employees, and we need to rely on those additional supports such as the temporary system. But our first and foremost is ensuring that Australians are well skilled enough to meet the jobs available. We have 300,000 job opportunities in our sector alone over the next 5 years. So our focus needs to be, how do we ensure that those people who are underemployed or they are not employed at all actually get those job opportunities as the priority.
Danita, Sally McManus, we'll have to leave it there. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.